Good. Councillor Ross.
Yes, thank you. Good paper, and I'm totally supportive of this, but I just want to query a little bit. I feel as though we've been treading water a little bit. I mean, Waitakere had an on-site wastewater committee, which I got given the hospital pass to deal with the 15 or so resident ratepayer groups in the Waitakeres and to bring them together, and that ran for about 3 years, and we felt as though we were winning, and certainly on the educational side of things, and inspections and pump outs, a better service. Have we been, it has been 5 years to get to the stage, of the new super city, and we're only just starting to address it in some ways. Have we been treading water? Because things have got worse, as we know. And the issue of just wielding the stick a little bit more regards penalising people once they've been identified to have flawed systems. We seem to keep away from that. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but
yeah, I think Councillor Cho, from your perspective, I can absolutely see that progress has been, could have been more rapid. We now have and have had for the last year a cross-council group that is actively working on this region-wide solution that I was referring to, that does also cover the point that Councillor Walker raised with respect to the review of the TP58 and also potentially some new bylaws to make sure that we've got that stick well in place to enforce particularly compliance with the Building Act and the Resource Management Act. One of the challenges, and we are making quite significant headway, as Councillor Cooper has pointed out, with now both Western Lagoons and also Little Oneiroa, one of the significant challenges has been, just getting all of the departments, 8 different departments represented in this cross-council working group, from the consenting side to the parks, to environmental services, to stormwater, to water care, and making sure that we get all of those stakeholders committed to taking actions and put in place for your consideration any financial implications with respect to targeted rates or with respect to new resources in the consents team to lift up the monitoring enforcement that's currently occurring. So completely agree, in an ideal world it would have been done at a much more accelerated pace, but I feel quite confident that with this now cross-council working group delivering on Western Lagoons and Little Oneiroa and looking at this regional solution, that we're well placed from here on in.
just second thing is, for the largest coastal settlements like Piha or Oneiroa, have we contemplated or looked into the expense of a mini system, basically so that it feeds into the whole community and basically have a targeted rate, and we do away with the on-site? I mean, you wouldn't do it at Karakari, but you might do it at Oneiroa, or you might do it at Piha, and it may end up as cost-effective, maybe cheaper, maybe more, but may work better, simply, which is dealing with the problem of trying to get the contamination out of the waterways.
Councillor Clough, absolutely. That's one of the options that we're looking at for different locations within the region. It's certainly one of the options that was being explored at Muriwai a few years ago. That obviously needs to be done in consultation with water care.
Councillor Christine.
We have been looking at it. No, they've been dealt with. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Mike again.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The conversation is starting to take an ominous turn for the worse. There is an assumption that one of the members talked about the large number of failing septic tanks. The only data that I'm aware of that I know anything about, and that is the work that Auckland City Council did on Waiheke Island. And the number of failing septic tanks was very low indeed, which surprised everyone, including myself. So let's not make assumptions about septic tanks and associating septic tanks with failing septic tanks. Most of them work very well indeed, and they are way more sustainable than our industrial sewage treatment plant outfalls. We don't have to close beaches because of failing septic tanks in Auckland. We have to close beaches because of our conventional systems. Good as they are, they're certainly not perfect. And so therefore, one shouldn't make assumptions that the septic tank system is for a certain number of people is inferior to more industrial-sized processes. And I think we need to bear in mind that we are a region, was it 100 villages or whatever we were thinking of all that time ago. And when it comes to retrofitting homes, for instance, Great Barrier people are loath to give up their fireplaces, and they'd be mad to in that environment. So we have to bear that in mind. In terms of the Little Oniroa situation, I think it would be very interesting to calibrate how many, if any, failing septic tanks there are in that catchment. And it will be good for staff to have a look again at that data that Auckland City Council collected about 10 years ago. Septic tanks do fail, but in terms of environmental impacts, they're pretty minimal. And coming back to Little Oniroa again, it is essentially a duck pond, and there is a conflict between good people who want their children to swim in the water, but you know, if you're going to swim in a duck pond, you have to live with a certain amount of pollution. That's what we have to bear in mind. There are kind of subtleties and nuances to all of this. There's no simple answer.
Very good, Councillor Mike. Okay, right, I don't think there's any other speakers, so we've got mover and second. All those in favour say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Pass, thank you very much. Very good. Well done, team. Well done. Barry, good. Gail. By Tim. 14. Okay. Right, this is the mayoral proposal. There are recommendations there. I'll move. Councillor Penny W will second. Now, councillors, I basically had enough to say on presenting the mayoral proposal. The only thing I'll reiterate is, by and large, steady as she goes. We've got a LTP in place. And secondly, I'll just note, there was a comment from Councillor Linda at the last meeting when we considered the presentation of the proposal, that we should, in the annual plan document, actually acknowledge the work that we're doing around alternative sources of funding without specifically addressing the various alternative sources of funding. So the request has been made. I'm aware Councillor George is also got similar views. I'm very comfortable with that. So what I suggest we do is just incorporate that and make sure that we have some acknowledgement of that in the plan as we go forward from February on with our further inquiries into all of the different facets and proposals and suggestions within that document. Okay.
Could we just do a little bit of work?
Just a little bit of work on the wording? Okay, well,
Financing, not funding.
yeah, financing, that's right.
Financing.
Yep, that. Fine?
Yep.
Right. Okay, councillors, so it's there for your consideration. We had a good discussion last week, and so the floor is open. Councillor Bill.
Mr Mayor, just for some clarification, are you proposing to put these on bulk or is it separate A, B, C, D, E?
Well, actually, I mean, it's Christmas, so I'd like to put them on bulk. I mean, if anyone feels overly strongly about it.
Yeah, I'd like the farm one taken separately.
Okay, right. Well, you know, I mean, this is really the time to get them out to the community, and I suspect once we get the community feedback, we'll go through them all intensely and intimately, one by one. But there's an opportunity to just get them out there on the basis that we've got a fairly well set budget. would be my view of the optimum way forward, but I'm in your hands. Councillor Ross.
I just have a question first about that extra one that's just been plopped in there. My understanding is many of the considerations in the EY and partners, it should be the other report, whatever it is.
Cameron Partners.
Cameron Partners should be in there.
Put that in.
I thought a lot of it was going to be considered actually during the LTP.
Yeah.
I'm happy, I would vote for that, but I think it should actually have in there about the LTP in 17-18 as well.
Yep, I think that's fair. I mean, there's both short, medium and long-term discussions and considerations in there. Councillor Penny W.
And I heard that from the Chair of the Finance Committee and myself. We thought there was going to be certainly consideration next year, but the bigger issues, perhaps for a new council and an LTP discussion.
Yeah, no, look, and certainly I acknowledge that, and as indicated, some parts of that I suspect will be a considerable part of the mayoral, councillor and local board debates through that election.
So I'm proposing that we just add on the back of there the period of the 2017-18 LTP.
Yep, that's right.
As well.
I think that's cool.
Well, Mr Chairman, I think Mr Mayor, I think the issue is that there are some things in that report that is going to be reported back to the March finance and performance that is operational, that will actually set out some options for savings in the next annual plan. So it's not, I mean, the major things that we're going to talk about next year will be LTP, but there are some, as you know, some of those reports have suggested quite operational things that the staff are looking at and implementing now.
I think the opportunity though, because for the community who don't follow the day in day out discussion and debate within the chamber, the fact that there is this body of work that's bubbling away there, I think, and that will impact not just on this budget but on future budgets and on discussions, is probably worth noting it. And so Councillor Ross's suggestion to reflect the fact that it's a short, medium and long-term discussion is probably the right thing to do.
Okay.
Right, next speakers please. Councillor Chris. Councillor Chris, will you?
Well, Mr Chairman, as you correctly pointed out, it is Christmas, and I must express some disappointment. Councillor Quacks is not well, and he wanted to be here this morning because he wanted to ask some questions in and around the adequacy of the funding related to the unitary plan. So I just, on his behalf, would pose that question to the CEO, if he would like to comment in terms of the adequacy of the budget as proposed for meeting infrastructure provision for the unitary plan.
Actually, before the CEO has a comment about that, because you will be aware that there has been considerable discussion at both our council level and also at governmental level in this whole area of infrastructure funding, and has been very much gingered up by both the transport debate and the special housing area debate. You will find in the new year the Deputy Prime Minister, Bill English, playing a fairly significant role in making some statements around this. The real answer is there's never going to be enough, because we're growing that fast and we are certainly dealing with underinvestment from decades gone by. But I think there is a concerted focus from both the government view and our council view that we need to be much, much better aligned, and that we do need more financial support from government. And I suspect that that is coming. For a more operational view, Stephen, is there anything that you would like to say on the matter that could be helpful?
Through you, Chair, the answer is the same as it was last time. Until the unitary plan is finalised, we can't extrapolate
with a degree of accuracy what we're going to need to invest where in infrastructure to support that future land supply release and the upzoning that may or may not be adopted by this council. So that's a work to be completed once the unitary plan is through its process. And as you know, some parts of the unitary plan may well become subject to appeal, and we'll have uncertainty about those outcomes until that's resolved. The most pressing issue that we have, and the Mayor has alluded to it, is the fact that we've got 3% population growth at the moment. And we are working with officials to size what that challenge looks like for infrastructure and what we might do to speed it up, and we'll bring that work to you in the early part of 2016.
Very good. Right, any other comments? Councillor Ross.
Well, it must be the spirit of Christmas. No one wants to speak. So I will speak, and I really just want to speak about one thing, which is the transport targeted rate. And as I said last week, I thank the Mayor for his proposal. I'm supportive of all that, and I appreciate the stability that's underlining it. And as I appreciated the Mayor also agreeing to go out and consult on alternate strategies, including for the transport targeted rate. Clearly, Councillor Casey and myself and some others around the table have a different view on the structure of the transport targeted rate, and indeed we've come up with a proposal that delivers quite a significant scenario. So clearly an objective that we put up is 2.5, which as the general rate rise, not 3.2, and I agree that the mayoral proposal is trying to get it down to a bit lower than 3.2, but we're putting up there that 2.5 is achievable. I believe Chief Executive and Dean and the CFO are well on the way to actually making some savings to get us down to that 2.5. But probably the key thing is when it is with the residential rate on the scenario we're putting up, we believe we can get that average rate right down to 1.6% for residents, which is a significant difference, not 3.5 but 1.6, with business paying 4.07. That's almost 2% difference, and for some people it doesn't seem to matter, but for a lot of people it does matter. We're assuming the UAGC may stay the same, and we're not predisposed that against change, but we're quite clear in the LTP consultation last year, almost 70% of the people said are quite happy with the UAGC where it was. So I think a key thing is the proposal that we've put up is to align the general rate structure with the transport targeted rate, or I should say the transport targeted rate with the general rate structure, which is there is a business differential that business are paying 32.7%. So there's a lot to argue to say to align things. So in a house that at about $1 million, there can be about a 1.5% difference in the rate set for people, and again we think that's quite significant. And as again the proposal that we've put out, the majority of businesses will pay less than the $183 they're paying now, so $29,000 as compared to about $26,000. Larger businesses clearly will pay more, and just so we're quite clear, and there's no misleading information putting around, what we're proposing delivers exactly the same amount of money for the accelerated transport program, which is key for, I think most of us are totally behind that. We can see the need, and as we're talking, Stephen was just saying, we got that 3% population increase, so we're bursting at the seams. In the last LTP, about 70% of the people also said that the business differential, they couldn't quite understand why we were even moving to lower the business differential. Now, I actually don't have a major problem with lowering it, but it's clearly out there. People were not very happy about it and thought basically the question is, why are we doing it? I suppose when we decided what we were going to go out for consultation on at the end of October, there were several councillors, and I'm going to mention Councillor Cashmore and Councillor Webster, Councillor Penrose, who didn't want to go out and consult about an alternative transport targeted rate, and they voted against that. I would really like them to explain today, or certainly to explain over the next few months, the intellectual justification for not wanting to even go out and consult. And even Michael Barnett, and I read something from the MBR in August of this year, he said, talking about the transport targeted rate, other factors weigh against the levy. It hits low value properties and smaller businesses harder than wealthier homeowners and larger businesses, since everyone pays the same. The council appears to support the idea that a corner store employing 2 or 3 people will benefit to the same extent as a large warehouse employing scores of people.